So although you may be the Secretary of State, the acting head of USAID, the National Security Advisor, the Archivist of America, the empire you have stumbled upon is not one of influence, sir. It is a kingdom of ash. So I ask, was it worth it? Senator Rubio was a principled statesman. Secretary Rubio, however, as we've seen in the past few months, is something different entirely. In 2022, Senator Rubio warned about the urgent and growing threat posed by China and called for a fully funded State Department and USAID. Senator Rubio wrote that soft power tools and alliances were vital to our national security. And today,
what began as an opening statement quickly turned into one of the sharpest criticisms of Secretary Marco Rubio's leadership. Congressman Greg Meeks compared today's Rubio to the senator he once was and argued they are no longer the same person. Here's what happened.
Secretary Rubio, I'm glad you are finally before this committee. Your testimony actually comes long after the State Department, under your leadership, took actions without required congressional consultation or that were contrary to the law. But I guess it's better late than never. But let me be clear, showing up months after the fact and refusing to stay until every member has questioned you for 5 minutes as entitled to under House rules are not the standards to which we hold the Secretary of State. Mr. Secretary, I've known you for a while, and I respected very much Senator Rubio, even when we disagreed. Senator Rubio was a principled statesman. Secretary Rubio, however, as we've seen in the past few months, is something different entirely. As a senator, you spoke often and forcefully about the dangers of executive overreach. You warned America not to lose its moral clarity or sacrifice democratic principles for short-term gain. Senator Rubio recognized that we cannot allow the executive branch to unilaterally determine the direction of the United States foreign policy without accountability to Congress. Secretary Rubio is doing precisely what Senator Rubio feared, withholding congressional appropriated funds, stonewalling oversight, and acting as if laws passed by this body are optional. Secretary Rubio has presided over the dismantling and destruction of everything Senator Rubio once defended. So although you may be the Secretary of State, the acting head of USAID, the National Security Advisor, the Archivist of America, the empire you have stumbled upon is not one of influence, sir. It is a kingdom of ash. So I ask, was it worth it?
Meeks begins by contrasting Rubio's years in the Senate with his actions as Secretary of State. His argument centers on whether Rubio has remained consistent with positions he once publicly defended.
Was it worth it to allow the near extension of U.S. foreign assistance and USAID, which Senator Rubio said, and I quote, is a very cost-effective way not only to export our values and our example, but to advance our security and our economic interests? And lie is exactly what this administration has done again and again. Each time Elon Musk and his department of arsonists brag and mislead the American public about massively inflated savings or lie about the program they have cut and their purpose, they're not telling you about the food that rotted on the shelves while people went hungry, or the medicine that was undistributed to children needlessly suffering, or the trust that was lost by your actions. But I believe you know better, because you've said as much, and yet here we are. In 2022, Senator Rubio warned about the urgent and growing threat posed by China and called for a fully funded State Department and USAID. Senator Rubio wrote that soft power tools and alliances were vital to our national security. And today, Secretary Rubio is here to defend an 84% cut of the foreign affairs budget. How does hollowing out our State Department and dismantling USAID help us compete with China? How does the America Alone budget project American strength? On human rights,
The speech now shifts to foreign policy priorities. Meeks questions funding decisions and argues they could affect America's global influence, while comparing them to Rubio's previous public positions on diplomacy and competition with China.
The contrast is even starker. Senator Rubio built his political brand on the cause of freedom and dignity. You condemned autocrats in Caracas, Havana, and Beijing for silencing dissent. But Secretary Rubio? He looks the other way when strongmen commit similar abuses. Secretary Rubio even defied a Supreme Court order to facilitate the return of a wrongly detained spouse of an American citizen. And when Senator Rubio became the first Hispanic American to serve as Secretary of State, he made sure to pull the ladder up behind him. In the name of dismantling efforts to making hiring and promotion fair, as you call it, wokeness, you have unlawfully dismantled programs designed to address decades of historical exclusion. These are not political experiments. They were congressionally supported efforts rooted in bipartisan recognition that our diplomatic corps must reflect the diversity and the strength of the nation it represents abroad. These are initiatives that Senator Rubio supported. You replaced experienced career employees with ideologues and political loyalists. Under your watch, sir, America's diplomatic and development corps have suffered the greatest brain drain in history, and America has been weakened and made more isolated by the actions of an administration that has abandoned its allies, cozied up to dictators, and conducted a foreign policy driven not by interests of the American people, but in support of the personal enrichment of the president and his family.
Meeks closes by expanding his criticism beyond individual policies, arguing that staffing changes and broader foreign policy decisions have weakened America's diplomatic position. The statement ends without a response from Secretary Rubio in this portion of the hearing. This opening statement was structured less as a series of questions and more as a detailed critique of Secretary Marco Rubio's leadership at the State Department. Rather than focusing on a single policy dispute, Representative Greg Meeks built his remarks around a broader comparison between Rubio's previous positions as a United States Senator and the policies he now supports as Secretary of State. That contrast became the central theme running through the entire statement. One of Meeks' primary arguments was consistency. Throughout the speech, he repeatedly referenced statements Rubio made during his Senate career regarding congressional oversight, foreign assistance, alliances, and America's role abroad. Meeks argued that those earlier positions differed significantly from actions taken by the State Department under Rubio's leadership. By presenting those comparisons, he sought to raise questions about whether Rubio's current decisions align with principles he had previously defended. A significant portion of the statement focused on U.S. foreign assistance and international development programs. Meeks argued that reductions in funding and organizational changes could have consequences extending beyond immediate budget savings. He suggested that foreign assistance has traditionally been viewed not only as humanitarian support, but also as a tool of diplomacy, national security, and strategic influence. He linked those concerns to broader competition with countries such as China, arguing that diplomatic engagement and international partnerships remain important elements of American foreign policy. The speech also addressed congressional oversight. Meeks criticized what he described as insufficient consultation with Congress regarding decisions affecting foreign affairs programs. Oversight and consultation between the executive and legislative branches have long been areas of debate in American government, particularly in matters involving foreign policy, where both branches exercise important constitutional responsibilities. His comments reflected those institutional concerns as much as disagreement over individual policies. Later in the statement, Meeks expanded his criticism to include personnel decisions and organizational changes within the State Department. He argued that experienced career officials had been replaced or departed during a period of significant restructuring. From his perspective, those developments weakened the department's institutional knowledge and diplomatic effectiveness. Supporters of administrative restructuring, however, often argue that leadership changes can reflect different policy priorities and management philosophies. That broader debate about government reform extends well beyond this particular hearing. Another major theme involved America's international image. Meeks argued that foreign policy is shaped not only by military or economic strength, but also by diplomacy, alliances, and the credibility of American institutions. He suggested that reductions in diplomatic engagement and international assistance could influence how allies and competitors evaluate the United States. Others may disagree with that assessment and argue that different foreign policy approaches better serve national interests. Those competing perspectives are common in discussions about America's role in global affairs. Overall, this opening statement served as a comprehensive critique rather than an exchange of questions and answers. Because there was no response from Secretary Rubio during this portion, viewers heard only one side of the argument in this segment. As with many opening statements during congressional hearings, the remarks were designed to frame the issues the speaker believed deserved the committee's attention before questioning continued. Ultimately, debates over foreign policy often involve competing judgments about how best to balance national security, diplomacy, economic priorities, and congressional oversight. This statement reflected one perspective on those issues, while the broader hearing provides additional context through testimony and responses from the administration. Watching the complete exchange allows viewers to evaluate both the criticisms raised and the explanations offered before reaching their own conclusions.